Chris Hinshaw, you're known for coaching 36 CrossFit Games athletes to championship, but you helped me craft a rucking protocol for a 26-mile ruck that I'm going to do. And I'm doing it fasted, and it's going to be 30 pounds. And it's in Normandy, France. Awesome, cool event with Go Ruck.
Yeah.
But you wrote this protocol for me, and I wanted to share with my audience and share with people that are interested in starting rucking. Because one of the things that blew me away the most was when I came to you and I was saying, okay, hey, it's probably going to be 25, 30 miles. I suppose I'll have to do some longer rucks. Like I'm going to have to do some 20 milers. And you kind of laughed. You're like, no. It's more about, like, we're not going to get anywhere near 20 miles in your training rucks. And it was immediately like that, okay, I'm all ears. This is interesting because the training for the ruck is so different than what someone may have thought.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to have you kind of walk me through what you did for me and why, and how someone can get started rucking and the protocol they might want to follow getting into it.
Yeah.
I'm doing something pretty cool, and in light of that, I'm putting a special discount link so that you can get some cool stuff as a result of what I'm doing. I'm heading to Normandy, France, and I'm doing a 26.2 mile, 30-pound fasted ruck with Go Ruck and Bowmar Nutrition in honor of D-Day. So it's gonna be awesome. It's the 80th anniversary of D-Day, so I'm gonna march from Omaha Beach to Utah Beach, and it's gonna be awesome. In my training for this, I've been consuming essential amino acids from Bowmar Nutrition, and I've also been consuming their protein powder. It's been a huge part of what I'm doing. Now, they were generous enough to sort of sponsor me going through my training and sponsor the event for me. So as a result of that, I put a link down below for the products that I've been using. I've been using their whey protein powder, which is sweetened with allulose. There's no artificial sweeteners in it or anything like that, and it's literally the best tasting protein powder I've ever had. So it's made my training, like, giving me something to look forward to. But I've been adding in essential amino acids on my longer rucks. The literature is starting to support that essential amino acids, not BCAAs, are quite productive when it comes down to preserving muscle mass under load. So if I'm doing cardio, doing things like this. So anyhow, that link is down below, saves you 15% off whatever you want from Bowmar Nutrition, but I recommend that you try the products that I'm using in my training prep.
You presented from was really interesting because you're knowledgeable and you're sophisticated. So the complexities in terms of programming options that I had available to me were much greater than I'm normally given. A lot of athletes, when they want to just, let's say, train for a marathon, they'll go to some online platform and they'll get a program, and what it will say is, you're going to run this distance today, 2 days later you're going to run a different distance, 3 days later you're going to run a different distance, and all it is it's focusing on volume, volume, volume at one speed. And it doesn't take into account the individual. It's just focusing on the event, and we call that like an event-centered model. So it doesn't know your gender, it doesn't know ages, it doesn't know injury, it doesn't know anything about you because it doesn't care. The opposite side is when we get some insights into the individual, and that is where we can create an athlete-centered model. And so one of the things that we talked early on was, how much time do you have? Because you were debating about like doing the 80K, the 50 mile, and it was like, I don't know, and it was like, you didn't have it in your heart, first of all, because you've already done these things. And then it's also the residual damage that comes along with doing things like that. Like, we know there's a price that you pay. But it was more important was, how much time do you have? Because you could do a 50 mile, but I need more time. And when it all came down to it was, I want to do something, one, that I feel good during the entire piece. I don't want to have a bunch of residual damage. So if my kid wants to play catch that night, I could play catch. And I said, you know what? 26.2 miles is manageable for what you have in time and your goals. What people need to think about as soon as you get this is 26.2 miles. What is the maximum that I need to train? Because that's what people always done. It's a volume event, so I must be dealing with volume. And people think it's the one-time run. I need to build this up. So in marathon running, people call it 20 miles, right? I need to get to 20 miles. The reason why 20 miles exists is because the elite of the world, right? These are the Olympians and the world champions would do 20-mile runs. But these athletes, when they do a 20-mile run, how long does it take them? It takes them 2 hours. So if you're going to do a marathon in, let's say, 4 hours, why are you doing 20-mile run when you're now on your feet double the amount of time that a marathon runner? It logically doesn't make sense. And so athletes, this is where ownership comes in, but you need to give a coach and get guidance. And so it's like, what you have to realize is when you train for a marathon, it's the cumulative effect of volume. You are developing the structure to withstand the volume. And so you must have consistency. You must be regular in the way in which you train, because it's the accumulation of volume, that time on your feet, that matters. The trick is, I've got to put it in a way that keeps you engaged and motivated to stick with the program. Most people, when they sign up for a marathon training program, they don't stick with it because it's just volume and volume and volume and volume. You've got to mix in some variety. And so that's how I actually started, is listening to you and building a program around your variables and what your goals were. And I think that what resonated, and luckily when I said, no, it's not about, you're not going to have to go out and do 4-hour rucks. You're not going to have to do 6-hour rucks to prepare, but we're going to have to look at some consistency. And so the first piece that I told you, and I don't remember this, but I said, I don't like the idea of marathon runs where they say on the weekend, which is typically the long run, this week you're going to do 12, next Saturday you're going to do 13. Oh, the next Saturday you're going to do 14 and then 15. You look forward on that and it's like, that's a grind. And it should be enjoyable, right? You should love your training. So when you finish your workout, you're left with a feeling of like, I can't wait for the next one, because it's your journey that you're on. People don't realize that when you sign up for a marathon, it should be something where it's a great experience. It shouldn't be survival. And so you need to have the workouts that feel the same way. So I told you, I said, I like to break up the long run, where you will do a long run, but then the next weekend, it's going to be a AM/PM workout. What we're going to do is we're going to break that long run into 2 workouts with a small gap of rest in between. You'll still get that cumulative effect, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you do a longer portion at the same speed of the week before. The evening workout's going to be shorter, but we're going to make it faster. And that faster speed will still leave a cumulative effect. That was what you had in the morning. So net, we've increased the total volume from week to week, but I did 2 different distances and 2 different speeds to keep you engaged. You have a different challenge. So the trick is to find a way to keep the athlete motivated without me being there. And so that's how because you told me when we talked, I'm nervous about the long piece. Mm-hmm. And so what I did was I took that piece away from you in that talk. The rest... In
the training specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, don't worry, this is how we'll deal with it. The rest was like the fun for me.
Yeah, it was difficult for me to say, I don't have the time to go into a training block where I'm away from my wife and kids for 4 hours on a Saturday. It's
right.
just,
it's selfish.
It's just not going to happen. And I'm just past that state in my life where when I'm training for this kind of thing, I don't want to go back in a training block. If I keep doing that again, my wife's going to, I don't think she'll leave me for it, but I'm definitely going to get some dirty looks. It's just not, it's not a responsible thing for me to do. Like I'm not, and she would support it, but it's also just, I don't want to put her in that position.
And you don't have like we were talking about, it's like, when you have done those things, there's not the fire for that anymore.
It's more about doing it because I genuinely want to do it.
Yeah.
And when, what I like about how you put this together, and I will link out to it, full disclaimer, it's down below, like it's accessible to everyone. It's a free protocol that Chris put together for me to follow through Go Ruck. So it is accessible. So it's linked down below.
And it's all rate of perceived exertion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that I find, so with rucking in this particular case, the ruck, the event is going to be carrying 30 pounds.
Yeah.
A lot of the training you have me doing isn't even holding the full 30 pounds.
Right.
Like you actually, one thing I thought was really interesting, it was almost intervals in a way. You have my heavy rucks are dosed in ways where I'm carrying the weight for X amount of time and then kind of deloading for a minute and then reloading again. Can you explain how that works?
So what you must realize is that when you're training someone for a known event, You know the variable that they're targeting. So it makes it simple, right? I can calculate your speed and I can calculate the total amount of time on your feet, meaning your duration, and I can build the program around those variables, essentially stair-stepping you up there. The key piece is that if you just train those variables, what about when the muscles fail doing those variables in the event? Then you're not prepared. So you must train the neighboring variables as well, meaning if your ruck weight is 30 pounds, I've got to train you at some ruck weights that are lighter than that and some ruck weights that are heavier than that. Because water, for example, one of the requirements in the ruck is that you got to carry 3 liters of water, which is 6.6 pounds. So you've got your 30 pounds, plus you got another 6.6, plus you got maybe other provisions that you're carrying with you.
Pack.
That's it. I wouldn't carry anything else, right? It's not long enough. But the water, and that's it. Well, that water weight's going to vanish also. So what we have to do is we've got to look at different loads. Same thing holds true with your cadence. And a lot of people don't think about cadence when they're actually rucking. But if you only train one cadence, what do you do when your stride length shortens due to fatigue? You have no other gear. What if when it's heavy? Do you have a different cadence under heavy load than light load? Well, of course you do. So what we have to do is vary that as well. So what I did is I wrote a program that had different ruck weights, it had different cadences, and it had different ways that we attacked maximal distance. And then the final thing that I played around with, which I stuck in there, was some running only workouts. Now, I don't know how, you never told me what you thought of that.
No, actually, because you programmed it starting a couple of weeks ago, so I've done one of the RPE 6 runs and one of the RPE 8 runs, and the RPE 6 was, well, about a 6. The 8 was quite brutal, to be honest. And I tried to, because the way that it's programmed, and again, you can see it in the PDF, it's, you kind of select one. It's like you pick one that makes the most sense, and I'm like, oh boy, I haven't done.
How deep, you didn't start on number 1?
No.
So the way that it was written was, because athletes, there'll be different caliber levels. And the way that we wrote it was, we want people that are brand new, but people that are super experienced. And so instead of me just saying, here's workout 1 for week 1, here's the category, and there may be 14 workouts in there, but on the calendar, there's only 4.
Yeah, correct.
And what you're gonna do is pick the one that fits your level of fitness, and they progressively get harder. So you went...
I went down, I think I started at like the 4th or 5th one.
Bro.
But it was, honestly, it was hard, but I would have given it probably a 9 instead of an 8 on my RPE. Like, it was very doable because I do intervals a fair bit. Right. I think if I had to I probably would have started maybe on the 3rd one. Yeah. The 1 was just not enough volume. I would have felt like that's not enough. Yeah. But I also figured when you wrote it for a broad spectrum of people. So it was that's probably brutal enough, which I think was the, what I started, it was the 45 on, 45 off, 45 on, 45 off for 8 sets. So what is that, the 3rd or the 4th one?
Yeah, 3rd one, I think.
Yeah, so it's probably good. So it's not that bad. So, and that was, and for me, it still felt like, oh my gosh, am I leaving a lot on the table? And that's the kind of thing that I've had to like say, okay, like it's okay if that felt like you still had some left in the tank volume-wise, because that was plenty, right?
That's right. But you remember, it's a different stimulus than what you did in the rucking. So what we're doing is opening up your stride. We have a different heart rate level, right? So we're just trying to dose other muscle fiber groups, motor units. We're trying to target a different metabolic pathway, right? So that you're more well-rounded going into the competition. And that's where people pigeonhole themselves. Like most people, if they're training for a ruck, they're just doing what everybody does. Volume, 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 but you're not prepared then. You need versatility, so no matter what happens, you've got it covered. Because most people don't realize that primary speed is going to fatigue and fail. So then what's the backup plan? Yeah. And that's where it's a nice thing to be able to coach into the hybrid athlete space where strength matters, the endurance matters. And what you're trying to do is create good balance, right? And making sure that that athlete is covered no matter what happens. And that's how when I wrote it was as I'm writing it in a way where it gives the athlete the direction, but it's also they're in control because you are deciding which of the workouts that you want to do. You picked it.
Yeah.
And that's important because like when you have a bad experience and you pick it, you reflect and go, man, if I could do that one again, I know I would be better. And so when you pick the next one, you're more methodical about it. And that's how you get athletes to buy in. I mean, I always say that like coaches, like this retention piece is critical. Like if you didn't get an athlete to come back, then that's a sign that things are going wrong for you as a coach. But you have to write workouts that engages them. They have to be when they look at it, it's like, this is interesting to me. And that's what I was trying to do was create an environment for anybody when they sign into it. Yeah, there is some learning involved in it, but once I have it and you finish that first week, I got the whole rest of it. Yeah. And it's going to make you well-rounded because I want that experience. I want you to finish and go, you know what? That was all right. Like I had a good time. And to think that you could do 26.2 miles and have a good time, then you're going to come back. Not only to be coached by me, but also to go do another one. Yeah. And that's, I always think about that when I write programs is like, how can we do something where the experience when they're doing it, the journey, is as empowering as the actual event. The big thing is that I like writing programs where you not only have the great journey in doing the protocols, but you also have the event. But imagine for a lot of athletes that I work with, actually all of the ones that I work with, what I do is I give them an athlete assessment when they're all done. So if I've written them and they're personalized, what I will do is take those results of those workouts and say, oh, by the way, here's your strengths and weaknesses. Here is your predicted finishing times for all of these distances from 400 meters out to a marathon. And oh, by the way, here they are based upon time domains. And what I've done is I've collected your workout results and here's what your workouts say about you. And so moving forward, here's what I would recommend, meaning, do you need more speed? Do you need more endurance? And what's it based upon? Well, it's based upon the workouts that you gave. And that's the next, like if you did another marathon, I would give you that.
And the interesting thing, I mean, a lot of people probably wonder, okay, so training protocol, here's what you're doing. And just to give people like insight into what I'm doing a little bit more nutritionally.
Yeah.
You also did, and you're having me do something that you mentioned on the phone that I know you didn't particularly put in the plan because it didn't need to go out to the public per se, but is kind of manipulating being able to endure when you're hungry. Yes. Not just being, so people know me because I do a lot of fasted endeavors, right? I do all kinds of weird things, marathon distances, whatever, fasted without food, just mainly because I feel good doing it, but also I do like to prove that it's absolutely can be done. And I'm going to probably do this one fasted, but I'm also not going to be bummed out if I don't do it fasted. But the point is, most of my training in this, at least in the morning workouts, is fasted.
Yeah.
But then you suggested something to me, which was very interesting for a different reason. I like to fast metabolically because it gets me, when I'm training for things like this, it's just like that. It's like, if I'm in this condition where I'm in a race situation or I'm in a backcountry environment, I want to know that I can handle myself without food. Yeah. I want to know that I could. And it comes from some backcountry experience too. Like I want to know that like I can get out. I want to know that I'm conditioned enough to like haul my 30, 40 pound pack out with minimal or no fuel and get out to safety and not sitting there being so dependent on glucose that I'm dying looking for food. It just makes me feel safe and secure that way.
Yep.
And mommy issues. And then with you mentioned something. He's like, I might have you eat prior to one morning workout and then sort of starve yourself the rest of the day and go into your evening workout like fasted. Explain that, because how it was a totally different idea than I've ever seen. So
there's two things in there, is that I do want you to be fasted in some of these workouts. For the main reason is that I want you to become more fat adapted when you're in that fasted state. So if you don't have any carbs available to you, it's almost like you have hit the wall in a marathon. And now what you have to do is finish those last 6 miles without any carbs. So what I want you to do is I want you to experience and make sure that you know what that sensation feels like. The other piece, though, is that most don't realize, if they've never done a marathon, it's an event that becomes emotional. It becomes mental. That negative thought propagates and it begins to take root. And once you travel down that path because something has happened bad, you stay in that pathway. And when you start feeling from a nutrition standpoint that you need nourishment, you need carbohydrates, that is the sure ticket that you enter that pathway. And that's when panic strikes in. And what you need to do is you need to be looking at training adaptations that gives you that sensation so that you are aware of that sensation and it is a manageable sensation. Most people make bad decisions because they've never experienced it before. Well, how do you prepare an athlete for feeling like I'm nutritionally starved? We've got to create that in the training protocols. And so a lot of athletes, when they experience a marathon for the first time, they're caught off guard by the damage of running out of glycogen, by running out of carbs. And they're just not ready for it. And so for most people, what I want to do is I want them to not only train that way, but I also want them to have that sensation.
And that's definitely something where going into a morning workout with fuel and then going, 12, 13, 14 hours without fuel.
Yeah.
It's a different psychological game than, say, having a meal at 5 p.m., going to bed, waking up, being in a fasted state, but you haven't been sitting there like all night awake, not eating. You just woke up and you've got hormones in your favor, adrenaline, cortisol, that are actually keeping you satiated in the morning anyway. So like, because you just rolled out of bed and you're not it's not a huge deal. But like when you actually whet your appetite by having some food in the morning, work out via ruck, and then not replenish afterwards, and then keep going, and then do another, and then because you're looking forward to the food more, it's a psychological, it's a trick. And I have absolutely done my fair share of 3-4 day fasts, and it's actually harder for me to do this, where I whet my appetite, eat something, get the juices flowing where I want food. But then, because anyone that's ever fasted before knows that like once the gullet opens, then it's on, then you just want food, right? It's like you can go for a period of time without it and that's fine. So this like gives you a taste of it. So it's a whole different psychological game, which has made those evening workouts, which I'm just messing around with doing that, it's a different level.
And I'm making it go faster.
Yes. Yeah, so
right, like I'm making it so that, it's like, okay, I'm gonna do it, but now he wants me to even go faster. So what I'm trying to do is create an accelerator of the anxiety, right? Because I think that's the trick. Like when I did Ironman, one of the things that you realize right away is that bad things happen. And are you able to manage that unknown? That, like, one of the things that happened to me was I was riding with the top 3 people and I got a flat tire. And by the time I was fast at fixing them, it would take me like a minute and a half to fix it and get it. But by that time, they're gone. Yeah. And they're sitting out there right in front of me the rest of the way. And it was like, how are you going to treat that? Like one time, my big toenail fell off in the middle of a run. And I feel it floating around because I don't wear socks in the bottom of my shoe. And I was like, and the blood's sitting there. I'm like, and what do you respond? And because of the difficulties of the things and how I trained, like that response was, I was like, how freaking cool that I popped my toenail off and it's floating around in my shoe. Like it was kind of like, I thought it was cool. But you have to train those things so that when a bad thing happens, you just don't auger into the earth. Yeah. And you see it all the times with athletes. Bad stuff happens. Snap out of it. Yeah, so that's why when I did that, I'm like, how can I make this worse? I'm gonna make them go faster.
You can make it worse without actually straining the biomechanical load, right? Like it's our way of thinking of how do we make it worse is, oh, well, let's just add more weight. Let's go faster. Let's go harder. Let's go longer. Like, no, that's not all. It's not always input, output. There's varying factors into why things get hard. Yep. And it's so easier to linearly progress in a way thinking that an event that is completely in a world of unknowns is going to linearly progress the same way your linearly progressed training is going to work. Yeah. But, You've probably arranged for someone to shoot blow darts at me, one of my trainers. I mean, it's like,
no, I don't do that.
I think it's tremendous because with all the special operations people that I've worked with over the years, specifically with the Army, and that's always what they're training for, is the unknown, is they want to be able to know, like, am I under control in a situation that, you know, and when I had Dean Stat on the channel, like he was a former SBS, SAS guy, and he talked about a lot. He's like, you know, we get into a situation where we get out there and, you know, maybe we had 10 miles to ruck to our zone, but now surprise, they changed it. You got to go 40 miles and you got to go, you know, into a different environment. Oh, and by the way, you're also going to be behind enemy lines, and now everything's different. And to not break down and to still be able to, and to me, as I guess I would call myself somewhat of an aging athlete, it's like, that's more important to me. I want to be able to still do this, even if my kids are throwing a fit the night before and I didn't sleep because I'm stressed out about something. Right. I want to be prepared mentally for that. And I think that's interesting about how you program.
I think that what you just said is powerful. Like, people need to realize, like, these events alter you. They do. When you do something that pushes the extremes of your boundary, like extremes of your experience, you're not the same person anymore. Your capabilities have improved. And I always tell people, like, these things are way more than just the event. But what you have to do is what you just said. Reflect and realize, how much stuff can you hold on to and still be able to do this monumental piece? And that's the part where a good coach comes in, is like, I'm going to make sure that every single piece that you experience physically is addressed, so that when your brain is filled with all, because I can't control that, with all of the stresses of work, all the stresses of family are piled into your head, that you say, I got it. And that's the most important part, because that's going to make it so that you feel safe. You feel confident. Most people don't realize that coaches are in the game. It's just confidence. All I'm trying to do, no matter what is given to you in your real day life, no matter what I give you, you're like, at the end of it, I'm now even more confident. And that confidence is going to be something that feeds you into the next one. We always need to realize that people's worlds are filled with chaos. My job is, when you actually enter this event and you're middle of it, you're like, I got it. And the question really, like, when you do this event, I want to know specifically, when does that I got it pop into your head? Exactly. And that's very telling, because if you don't have it, it's not going to happen until 23 miles, 22 miles. But if you've got it, it's going to happen early. Like, it will happen in that third of the way through. And that's power. And I always tell athletes, like, I mean, if you looked at test matches with elite athletes, it's like, at what point in time did you know you had it? Like, if I give you 5 by 1,000 at your 5K pace with 15 seconds of rest, when did you have it? You know, and that says something. Oh, I didn't know until the fourth one. Oh, I knew on the second one. That says something. Yeah, so that's why I always tell people that, you know, we want to write workouts that push people into an unknown space. But because I'm not vested in the same way, I don't have any emotion in the game, I just see numbers. And so what my job is to see what they don't see. And that's what I'm trying to make available to you. And ultimately, when I do that, it changes you as an individual, because if I can get you to see what I see, now we can change our direction. But most people, it takes some time, because life's gotten in the way. They don't think about that, right? That they don't realize that, you know, the commentary when you're in business and you're in meetings of you know, people making comments about you and how much that weighs on you. But it does. And where it surfaces is always in our health and fitness. And so when we get a chance to restructure somebody, what we have to realize is that baggage is real and they have it, but I need to show them what I see, because I don't have any of the baggage. And that's the trick. And in elite athletes, it's even more challenging, because they can't be fooled.
Yeah.
They want something that I don't know if I could do it. But if I do, I know that that's where the confidence hides. And that's the trick. And so when I wrote that, the whole time I'm like, because we didn't even talk, after the first talk, I'm like, I have enough. Yeah. And I'm like, I wonder if this will create that for him. And so like, that's why I wanted to ask you, like, when you do the race, the only ask I have is, when did you say in your mind, I got it? Yeah. That the part is the most fascinating piece, is because the mind is the one. And if the mind believes it, then you've got it.
Agreed, man.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it'd be fun.
Again, I'll link out to everything down below, but Chris, where can everyone find you specifically?
So you can find me at aerobiccapacity.com. Instagram's Aerobic Capacity, Facebook's Aerobic Capacity, but yeah, aerobiccapacity.com.
Perfect. Thanks, my man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.